There's an episode on WWE Unknown surrounding like the relationship between Ray and Eddie.
Oh, okay.
And oh my god, it is the best episode in the entire docuseries, and it's got some really good episodes, but this one I wanted to fucking cry at the end. You know what I mean? Because it's so real. The brotherhood that they had, because they started talking right at the beginning. They started talking about how there were two kinds of wrestlers. There were the Destinos and the Technicos. And so that was the good guys and the bad guys. It's probably the other way around. But yeah, either way, it's the good guys and the bad guys. And Eddie, he was so good at playing both, but he was usually the bad guy, you know? And you talk about how they grew up in the same areas, how Eddie was building his own name in the indie circuits, you know?
Yeah.
And over time, when they went to WCW and they did some crazy stuff, and then just every single person that they brought on, Kurt Angle, everybody was saying how Eddie Guerrero was literally perfect in the ring, as he communicated very well. He had great charisma. He built off the crowd so well. He was the epitome of perfection, and he was gone too soon, right?
Yeah.
And Ray, they sat Ray down and they started talking to Ray about the day he found out that Eddie died. And what happened was Ray was going to share a flight with Eddie to the next event. But instead of sharing that flight, he took a red eye and he took a separate flight. And so once he got to his destination, somebody from the WWE crew was there with him, helping him unpack or something along those lines. And the guy told him, "Hey, did you hear about Eddie?" And Ray was like, "No, what happened?" And the guy told him that Eddie died in his hotel room. And Ray, you know, he everything stopped. Everything freezed. He drove straight to the hotel and he went into the apartment room where he was. And he talked to the doctor who was on scene. And the doctor went on to the forensics guys and said, "Can these guys see Eddie one last time before you guys take him away?" They let him. And when they walked in, Eddie was on the floor on his back. And Ray said that Ray and Chavo were there. Chavo was there too.
Yeah.
And Ray was there, and he remembers like just dropping to his knees and just bawling, crying out.
Breaking down.
Ray was broken.
Yeah.
Eddie was broken. We were all not Eddie. Chavo was broken. Everyone was broken. You know, and a week or so after the service, they did a memorial to Eddie, that kind of thing, and that launched Ray's push in the Rumble. And they showed like different like interviews and like press conferences where he was like, "Mira hermano, I'm gonna do this for you. This Royal Rumble I dedicate to you, Eddie." You know. They also addressed like some of the criticism. It's like, well, why are we still wrestling after Eddie dies? Like everyone's still reeling from Eddie's death, you know. And Rey Mysterio said, "Is like, I don't have a problem with continuing the show because it was so hard for us and it was so difficult for us. But the one thing that got me by, was the fact that Eddie would have wanted the show to go on. We thought, what would Eddie want?"
Yeah.
And Eddie wanted the show to go on. So that's exactly what we did, and we dedicated our work for him. And yeah, sooner or later, it became that magical swan song where Ray came into number 2, beat the world record for longest time in the Rumble, and was the winner of that said Royal Rumble. And the heel work that was built off of Triple H, who entered at number 1 with Ray, was perfect. And Triple H talks about how there's a lot of planning that goes on to like the exact timing that you do certain moves near the end and when you get eliminated. And I knew that the only way to make this as believable as possible that Ray could get screwed is if I get eliminated second to last and that Randy and Ray were in the ring as the last two. Because you're thinking Randy's going to pull off some crazy heel work.
Yeah.
And Randy's a young prodigy who could win.
Exactly.
And they could screw over Ray. Right? And, of course, they do the whole thing where Ray's desperately fighting, and he does that fucking head scissor, and Randy goes over the top rope, and Randy's just astonished and awestruck. He said, like, and Randy said, it's like, just in that moment, you had... No, Ray said, is like, in that moment when Randy went over the top rope and he sold it for me, and he looked up and he was in awe and shock, and the crowd just lit up. It was the most powerful thing in the world for him because Eddie's name was still alive in that moment. Eddie was there watching over him in that moment. And I mean, when he won the championship, he would say that it's like, Eddie's still here, and this championship's, I won this for you, Eddie, that kind of thing. His name is still alive in WWE to this day because, for once, WWE wised up and actually made a good storyline revolving around real world events.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to placate the story or how some critics say how they took advantage of the situation. No, they did it because Ray and their families, the Guerrero family, they know damn well that Eddie would have wanted this. And the fact that Ray got pushed into the main event scene through this and continued to win championships afterward.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not disrespecting Eddie in my book. There's some people who think that's that's how it works, and they criticize WWE for it. I'm not one of those people. It's just, it was beautiful, and it made me want to go rewatch the match. And yeah, with all of that extra weight added onto it, it really is just a swan song of Ray representing Mexican culture, representing the luchador, all of that. Ray mentioned a long time ago, back when he was in the Indies. No, when he was in WCW, Eric Bischoff was unmasking the luchadors one by one. And eventually, it got down to Rey Mysterio's name on the list. And he was working with Eddie. Eddie was able to get by that day and not have to unmask Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, that was Halloween Havoc, right?
Yeah, Eddie, what's the word? He lobbied for it, and he was able to save Rey Mysterio's unmasking. So.
Even though WCW did it later.
What, ECW did? Yeah, they unmasked him, and what? Did he block his face immediately, or was it just fully?
No, WCW, Rey Mysterio was unmasked. And so once a luchador's unmasked, it's tradition that you basically can't put the mask back on. And so for a lot of his WCW run, Rey Mysterio was just unmasked, and it wasn't until he got that WCW got bought out, and then he got signed to WWE that they brought the mask back, and he even had to get permission and stuff to do that from, I don't know, somewhere. Like I think like somewhere in Mexico, the wrestling community there. They basically had to give Ray permission to use the mask again because it goes against tradition that he was already unmasked. But it wasn't Eddie that did it, but he did get unmasked eventually in WCW.
All right. Well, I'm glad that they were able to give him a fresh start as well, because that's just not something what's the word? That's just not something, you don't fuck with that kind of heritage. If they don't want to fucking unmask, you don't do it. But the fact that Eric Bischoff, Ray was talking about it, and Eric said pretty much is like, you're under contract, you do what you're told. That's pretty much what the conversation went like. So when I hear shit like that, I'm like, wow, that's fucking horrible. You know what I mean?
It is.
This is Mexican wrestling heritage. All right, I don't want to fucking unmask. I shouldn't have to. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Right, yeah, and then look at just how much money WWE's made from the mask being a symbol. It's like
absolutely ridiculous how much money they made off of that shit. Which you could argue, well, you're commercializing it, bro. Let Rey Mysterio make his fucking commission. You know what I mean? Let him make his percentage, bro.
Exactly.
Oh, fuck. If other people want to celebrate cultures that they're not a part of, why is that such a bad thing? Like the Ula Fala. Yeah. It's like, oh, I wanna, what's the word? I wanna buy my own or make my own commemorative. I understand WWE not commercializing it because it is pretty sacred, you know, but yeah, como se dice, but the fact that people want that Ula Fala or that kind of thing, that's not racist. It's not a bad thing. Yeah. There's plenty of people in that Samoan community where it's like, I just like that our culture is being more widespread and people are embracing it. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
That's it. I don't know why it's so bothersome, It just is what it is. People are weird. The people love getting offended for people who aren't offended.
Real.
It's fucking ridiculous.